Now that we have our porch completed, the next thing we need to do is start to add some columns to the front of this porch. Now, the columns are going to add some architectural character to our house, but they're also going to serve a structural purpose. Above these columns, there's going to be a roof coming down and burying all of its weight down in those areas. So we need to have a nice, thick, sturdy column that's both going to look good and can also structurally support the load of the roof up above. In order to achieve this, we're going to be in the first floor plan, and I'm just going to zoom down here so that we can see our existing deck. Next, I need to draw in where each of these columns are going to be at. Now, I could just sort of click to place them and try to get them about right and then nudge them around until I get them into the right spot. But one of the things that I think that I'm going to do is using the same techniques I have up to this point, which is just using my little annotation lines and select on detail lines here and draw in where I want those base points to be at for each of those columns. Now, I know that the first one is going to need to be 5 foot and 3/8 off of this structural point right here. So I'm just going to pick somewhere along the structural point of this wall and draw a line straight down 5 foot, 0 3/8 of an inch. And I know it's going to be somewhere in that area where that needs to be at. Next, I'm going to do something similar, except I'm going to draw a line off of this edge over into this direction. And that's going to need to be 1 foot, 5/8 of an inch over. So in order to be able to do that, I'm going to select on detail line, going to pick a point and come over 1 foot, 0 space 5/8. And I'm going to draw this line straight up from there. I no longer need this line because it's already given me the information that I need. And where that first column is going to need to go in at is where those two lines that we just drew a minute ago are crossing each other. I'm also going to delete this line right here just because we don't need it anymore. Next, I'm going to come up here to the Home tab and we're going to look for our columns. And you can see between Component and Roof here, we have the Column command. So if you select on the Column command, you'll see that we have a variety of columns here. Actually, in this case, we just have one kind of column. This one happens to be what's considered a structural column, but it's not really the kind of column that we need. We need more of an architectural column, one that has more architectural character to it than just this round column. So I'm going to hit the Escape key in order to get out of the command, and I'm going to click on this word column with a little down arrow right there. And instead of the structural column, I'm going to choose an architectural column off of the list. We have some rectangular columns, but we also have this fairly nice looking Doric column, and that's what I'd like to incorporate into our design. So I'm going to select this 10 by 10 column and move over in this direction. Now I'm going to try to place it right here. Now it doesn't really snap, so you just have to get kind of close in there. And as soon as you can see there's nothing left of these little lines that are showing up on either side of this little diamond or circular shape here, you know that you've got it right on. So you can just click once you get to that point. If you zoom out, you'll see that you now have that column in its correct location. Now I no longer need this line here at the center of it, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that one out. In fact, I could even delete this line right here if I wanted to, but for right now, I'm just going to leave it around as a reference line, and I'll come back to it later. Next, I know that there's going to be another one of these directly over here. And in order to do that, I'm just going to select on this column right here, which we've already placed, and we know has the right distance off of the edge here and off of the edge here. And I'm going to use a tool called the Mirror tool. And there's really two of them, and they're side by side. One is Mirror Pick axis, and the other is Mirror Draw axis. And we're going to use the Mirror Draw axis for this one. I'm going to move my cursor down until we see that little triangle right there on the outside edge of the deck. So I'm going to select right here, move straight up, and I'm just going to click somewhere out here, making sure I don't really touch on any particular object when I do it. By doing that, it automatically mirrored that column from that location directly to the other side, and it's also given us the same spacing off of the ends. Next, I'm going to select on this column. I'm going to use the Copy command. And I'm going to copy this column over just 6 feet. So now we have 3 of our columns moving along here. Now, the good news is because we have this column right here and we know what this distance is from here to here, we can now just copy this one up to this location and over to this location. So I'm going to select on this column, then use the copy command, make sure to check multiple so we can do this multiple times, click the intersection of, it's going to be the edge of the deck, then move straight up, select this corner of the deck, move straight over, select this intersection of the deck. Now, let me select on one of these columns just to verify its properties. I'm looking at it and I'm seeing there's no real base offset to it, and also that there's currently not a top offset. And that's going to be the same condition since we just copied it around of each and every one of these columns. Anything in Revit you can adjust after the fact. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this line because we no longer need it, that reference line that we had. And now I'm going to hold down the Control key and select on each and every one of those columns that we just placed. Now I know from experience that the base offset is going to need to be offset off of the first floor. And in this case, it seems to work best with this column to be just -5 inches down from the first floor. And it's just based on how the structure of the column is and the dimensions of the column. Next, as far as the top offset goes, I'm going to change this to be -1 foot, 4 inches. Now what this is going to do is that the base offset is just going to drop where the column is located at down 5 inches. This top offset, on the other hand, actually affects where the top of the column is going to be. And by dropping it down -1 feet, 4 inches, this is going to allow us to better support the roof and support the location where the trusses are going to be up there, or the structural members are going to be up there, supporting that big roof structure up above. So once you've done those, you can always either click on apply or just move over in this direction. As soon as you see this grayed out, you know that those properties have taken effect. Now if we take a look at this in a 3D view, spin it around so we can see it in a front elevation, you can now see that we have our architectural columns in place. One other thing that I'll point out is if we look at this from a front elevation view, something critical has taken place for us, something often overlooked whenever you're first going through the design process. Back when we placed the doors and the windows, I had us do very specific, they almost seemed like odd dimensions off of the corner of the different walls here. Well, the reason why I did that is so these windows, so that this door, so these windows would be centered on our column spacings. So that when it came time to look at this building from the front, one, we'd have uninterrupted views out of our windows, and two, when we're standing in the front of the building, everything would look nice and centered and clean, and it would just look like a finished, well thought out design. So whenever you're going to be placing in your columns, it's not just a matter of where it's structurally the most sound or where it's going to make the most sense economically. You also need to take into consideration the place where these columns are going to make the most sense architecturally, so the aesthetics of the building are nice and your design is a very clean one.